to Talk Art. I'm Sally Rain, and I will be your host as we delve into the world of the artist and the art that's all around us. Talk Art is sponsored by the Silicon Valley Open Studios. During the first 3 weekends in May, hundreds of local artists open their studios to the public. For more information, go to the website svos.org. Our guest is April Mayton. She is a mosaic artist who creates beautiful, intricate, three-dimensional mosaics using stained glass and found objects and minerals as well. So welcome, April.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here.
Yes. So tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get involved in creating mosaics?
Well, I've always been kind of crafty, and I've been creating things since I was really young. I like to paint. I started doing stained glass many years ago, so one thing just led to another. Besides being an artist, I'm also a Spanish teacher.
Oh, nice.
So I have lived abroad. I've lived in Mexico, Colombia, and Spain. And the last time I was in Spain, I was totally inspired by Antoni Gaudí. I was in Barcelona.
Oh, lucky you.
Oh, yeah, it's wonderful. And his Sagrada Familia and Casa Batlló with all the curves just made me want to get home and create something curvy. So I did. I came home and I created, this is called Alcanza, which means reach in Spanish because
Very
she's
nice.
reaching up. And so she's created, I call it a she because I don't know why, but you know, the curves out of stained glass and millefiori. These come from Venice. They're formed in canes and cut up, and so she's got a lot of millefiori on her. And you can never have too much bling, so I have rhinestones that wrap around her as well. So
Absolutely beautiful work.
Thank you.
Very nice. I like the way it rotates around. You can look at it in all different directions. It's beautiful.
It's different in every area, yeah.
Great. So you brought some images of some of your earlier work. So let's take a look at some of those now.
Okay.
And tell us a little bit about how you got into creating them and what they are.
Okay, well, this first piece is a butterfly stepping stone. It's my very first thing that I ever created as a mosaic. A girlfriend challenged me to create a mosaic. And so I went home and I took my stained glass, and there's some washers in it, and I created the mosaic. I went to the hardware store and found out what to do with grout, and then this was the result.
Very nice.
Thank you.
And the next one?
The next, this is probably the third piece I did. It's actually a 36-inch round picnic table. I was reading Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code, and I needed to put something with a feminine figure in there. And this is called the Tree of Knowledge. It's a tree that is actually a female, has female figures in her, and you kind of have to look close to see that. But she's holding the apple because there is wisdom in knowledge, and the water is all flowing from the tree as well, because without water, we wouldn't be anything. So it's got a lot of different things in that.
Very nice. I like the hidden imagery.
Yeah. So after I created the first two, my girlfriend again said, well, that's good. You can do something flat, but what can you do that's three-dimensional? So this flamingo is actually 6 feet tall. 6 inches of her are planted in the 300 pounds of concrete. And what was really funny, I was building this in front of my garage, and I'd work on it every day. And every day a retired engineer would go past walking his dog, and he'd look at it, shake his head, and say, it's not going to stand. Every day he went by and said, it's not going to stand.
Well, it does stand because I've seen it in your yard
Well,
at the open studios.
Here it is with a big body and a long neck, and I went to put this little head on, and all of a sudden, it almost crashed to the ground. I caught it just before it hit the ground. Darned if he wasn't right, you know? So it did teach me that maybe all that, you know, the physics that I should have learned in high school would have been a handy thing to learn.
So you weighted it in the ground then?
I weighted it. No, while I was building her, she had a 25-pound piece of metal on her on the base, and I built it around the 25-pound. Yeah.
So that's not moving anytime soon.
No, and she's built with plumbing parts and lots of mesh and lots of things inside to get the shape. So it was an interesting venture.
Yeah, beautiful.
This is yellow tang, and it's actually, the interior of yellow tang is actually styrofoam. So it's styrofoam covered with a concrete, more or less, concrete cement stuff. And then on top of that, I put the mosaic. Her whole tail and the fin are all beads. I love to use beads in my artwork.
So how big is that?
She's like 17 and a half inches from tip to end of fin. So there's lots and lots of beads. It took me forever. A tweezer was definitely required. And then again, because I like bling, she's got rhinestones. That gill down below is really, it's rhinestones. And then she is swimming by a rock. So it took me, the fish itself is rather light, but the rock weighs 12 pounds. So I love things that pop and things that have three-dimensional aspects to it. So, and I'm a teapot collector. So I found this teapot and I cut it in half, which was quite interesting because I didn't know what I was doing, but I had my little Dremel tool and I kept spritzing with water to stay cool. And so it's a half a teapot. The tea is about an inch thick of glass and the steam is glass. And then I cut a cup in half, and there's actually a real spoon in there too.
Very nice. Yeah, I like that three-dimensionality.
I love
it's
things like
beautiful.
that. Things have to pop.
So clearly you use a lot of found objects and things like that in your art. So tell us a little bit more about your materials and how that works.
Well, most of my stuff starts off with stained glass. That's the primary element. And I haunt garage sales and look for interesting items. I love costume jewelry. I've gotten into minerals because I hit a garage sale that had lots of minerals. So garage sales are amazing.
Oh, nice.
Just things that nobody else wants. That,
Right.
I just find a way to do it. Yeah.
So
the one right behind me, I have lots. This is April's garden. This is what I would want if I had a green thumb. And it's filled with beads, lots and lots of beads, and found objects. There's a little snake in there, a little glass snake, rhinestones, of course, a wooden butterfly that I found, tons of things that I would really like if I could grow things.
Very nice. And what about this one over here? This one behind me has birds in it, and what is the background created out of?
The pelicans are made out of stained glass, and the background is actually tempered glass. It's commonly called crash glass. It's what your car windshields are made out of, or shower doors. So I painted the background, and then I put I broke the tempered glass and put it over there. So I'd like to show you some of the things that I use, tools of my trade.
So you're going to do a demonstration for us.
Yeah,
Excellent.
I want to first kind of go through the tools. What's really important is to know that mosaic things come from the hardware store, not an art store. So first off, I start off with these things are like stirrers or popsicle sticks. They're very, very handy. The nippers, there's lots of different kinds of nippers, but again, it's a hardware store. And then I have a glass scorer. I'm going to show you how to use some of the stuff in a second. The biggest, most important thing when you are creating a mosaic is to figure out where you want the mosaic and what you want to do with it. Because your substrate, which is the backing or anything you use for your surface, and your adhesives have to go along with where it's going to go. If you want to do an outdoor mosaic, you can't use indoor glue. And you can't use wood because wood will warp. So you have to think about warpage and shrink factors. So this thing here is called Ouija board. It's actually cement with foam inside, and you have to hang the hanger first, which is why I have it there. But it's great for indoors and outdoors. It doesn't warp. It doesn't do anything else as long as you coat the sides. My favorite glue for indoors is Weld Bond. This holds like crazy. For outdoors, I like Lexel, which you have to put in a gun, and it's really good for things that have, like if you've got a surface that's one type of material and another and the glass, and they're going to shrink and contract at different times. That's a great one. And then I have thin set, again, hardware store. So this is a glass score. This one you do have to get from a glass store, and it's really, really easy to use. You can just score it like that. You just run it up and down and break it. So it breaks your glass. Glass is not that hard to break. You can also use something like a nip. Whoops. This is called a running pliers if you're afraid to break glass with your hands. Although I wouldn't suggest going into Mosaics if you are. But anyway, that's another way of breaking it. And then there's the handy 2-wheel nipper. And this just cuts, you can cut in pieces. You can just nip around. It is good to have a little pop, but you can make any shape you want. So you can round it. I just did that really quickly, so it's not as nicely done as it could be. But that's the 2-wheel nipper.
So that's for more detailed work?
You can, yeah. A lot of people never use anything but the 2-wheel nipper. This is my 2-wheel nipper that I use because it makes things just cut like butter. It's so easy. So if you're doing a lot, because I'll work for like a couple of hours, this one is really easy. But any 2-wheel nipper, and they're, you know, Beverly's or Michael's, they'll have those. If you're doing something heavy, like I do minerals occasionally, which I have to do with a specialized tool, but some of the smaller ones I can do with this. Again, hardware store. This one's a really good one because it's got an extra little lever in there to make it easier. But so a lot of things from the hardware store. Gloves, because once you get sticky, you never get unstuck, so it makes it really easy. Again, tweezers is really handy if you're going to do something small. But you can just take any, so first off, you have to decide though, if it's going to be outdoors, I go with thin set or Lexol. And again, this is usually my substrate of choice now. It's so lightweight, it's amazing. And you also have to think about the weight of the objects on it. So here's one that I have partially done. And you know, I had to figure out something that would hold that. And this does really easily. Again, I like dimensions, so I like to have things that pop up. And so the only thing you have to do is, this is found in a plumbing supply store. You have to call around where they use it for making showers. So it's just really, get any of these materials and just have fun. You can have a scrap from anything. I mean, it's just, you can be sitting there just mindlessly clipping away and nipping away. So
do you create a bunch of shapes and then fit them together, sort of like a puzzle, or do you have a plan ahead of time? You know, I don't want to say always, I usually have something in my head. When I started this one, I knew I wanted the vase, and I knew I wanted the certain shape of the vase. So I created that. After that, found objects for me. I went to Goodwill. This was a votive holder, a candle holder. Made it into a flower. And that was the only thing I knew when I started. I put that in there. Everything else, I just kind of go with it. And when I find something that has some really cool shapes or whatever, a lot of times that's what gives me the idea. Sometimes I sketch everything out minutely and get everything in, but a lot of times I just wing it. So April's garden note that we looked at earlier was totally, however it flowed, it flowed. Well, you brought some other images of some other work that you've done, so let's take a look at those now too.
Okay. This is the Prince of the Flowers. It's hanging in a garden, so it's an outdoor piece. And I use fused glass for the mushrooms and some of the flowers, so that's done in a kiln.
Did this one start with a sketch? It looks like very detailed.
The frog was totally sketched out, and that was the only thing that I sketched out. I knew I wanted the frog in the middle. He was the first piece to go in, and then the rest I just wanted a lot of green. A lot of times the glass talks to me, and the glass, sometimes it has these lines in there, and you just have to follow the lines because they're so beautiful. So you let the glass just
the pattern stained glass? that you use?
Yeah.
Very nice.
Mm-hmm. Milady, it looks so small and strange here, but she's actually 5 feet tall.
Wow.
She's, it's not on a black background. She's on a bathroom wall, and her left hand is actually holding onto a towel bar. So she is
beautiful. So it's cut out. You cut the substrate.
totally
to
cut out.
shape.
Again, that Ouija board that I showed you earlier, you can cut it with a utility knife. So you can cut
Oh, nice.
any shape you want. So she's totally cut out and hung on a wall.
5 feet tall.
5 feet tall.
That's great.
Yeah. This is Mike. He was my first portrait that I ever did. Quite a challenge. I started with a black and white picture, and I actually took my glasses off for this because I kept trying to get the value of the colored glass with the black and white picture. And I did a lot of squinting and a lot of taking my glasses off to
I really like the way you got the planes of his face, though. That is spectacular.
Thank you.
So who is Mike?
Well, Mike is my husband.
Oh. Looks like you're familiar with his face in that picture. That's a beautiful
a very
piece.
young Mike.
There you go.
When he had
He
red
looks
hair.
very happy.
Thank you. He always is. The next one, this one, again, found objects. The butterfly is a little micro mosaic because this is really a small piece. But the flower is made out of a clear hall lampshade.
That's a lampshade. How big is it?
It was clear glass, and I cut it up, formed the flower, I hand painted it.
Wow.
And then the inside has stained glass to make the little things that stick up in the middle of a flower. But this is only 8 by 8, so it's a very small piece. And then the butterfly, the body is 3-dimensional, standing on or laying on the flower. And then the wings are little micro mosaics.
Very nice. And the background, what is that?
The background is one piece, well, actually 2 pieces of stained glass.
Oh,
I just
very
wanted
nice.
really the attention all to be on the middle, on the butterfly and on the flower.
Oh, it's beautiful.
So, okay. This one is made from minerals. There's onyx. That's why it's called onyx, folks. I was being punny. It's got onyx and marble and fluorite and calcite. There's some mica in there, and then there's some big chunks of glass. So I had a really good time trying to figure out a new tool for me called a hammer and hardy, which is kind of like a chisel, upside down chisel and a hammer, and a special hammer.
Right.
And I broke the pieces and learned that a lot of the minerals have grains. You have to cut with the grains. So I made a lot of messes until I learned that.
Trial and error. A lot of artists like that.
Yes,
Exactly.
there was a lot of trial and error. All of my artwork, I started with nothing. I didn't know anything. I'm pretty much self-taught. So a lot of trial and error with everything I did. Alcanza, when I first had her, was made.
This one right here?
Mm-hmm. I wrapped her in gauze, the kind you make casts out of. Mm-hmm. And I thought, casts set up really hard. That'll be great. The second day, it was hard. I went in there. I just knocked the table a little, and all of a sudden it went, ew.
Uh-oh. It wasn't strong enough. So what did you make out of
I found
inside?
This epoxy that you mix it's like a clay, 2 kinds of clay, but it's an epoxy. Epoxy sculpt is what it's called. You mix it together, it goes rock hard in 24 hours.
Oh, nice.
That's what she's made of.
So that's the substrate for that one.
Yes, there's a lot of trial and error. The first time I tried breaking tempered glass, the glass would not break. I was hammering with a hammer.
Supposed to.
I couldn't figure it out. I was really hammering that stuff. And finally I called a friend and I said, I'm so mad, I can't get this to break. And she said, put all that anger into it. Okay, so you have to wrap tempered glass up into something because it
it'll
explodes.
shatter, yeah.
So I had it all wrapped up in a tablecloth, a plastic tablecloth. But I went to the corner where you're supposed to break it, and I hit that thing with every bit of anger I had. And it popped. And I was like,
yay.
yes, yes. So
it kind of shatters in the shapes, and then you use
it shatters, and you very carefully open it up.
Right.
And then you want some of these large pieces because the grout won't go into the little pieces. They'll
Right.
go into around it. So I gingerly picked them up with a spatula and I put them on a cookie sheet, brought them up to my studio. I mean, I did not want this to break. So it was such a challenge, but I could have taken a class and learned the easy way,
Right.
but I'm just about
well,
trial and error, experimenting and figuring it out for myself.
well,
So,
the originality definitely shows.
well, it's funny because my stuff has three-dimensionality. The pelicans come out from there, and I like to do that with almost everything I have. I've got some element that pops.
Yes.
To me, that's just a lot of fun.
Definitely.
Texture.
The piece that's behind you here,
Mm-hmm.
it looks like it's made out of minerals, but there's some other elements that pop. Why don't you tell us a little
I
bit
was
about
at a
that
garage sale, and I found all these rocks and minerals. I don't even know what they all are. I'd love to know. But I thought, oh, this is going to look really cool. So I brought it home, and because I in a punny family, I named it Hard Rock.
There you go.
And then I had to put elements of music in it. So if you look closely, you'll see a bass clef, a treble clef. There's a guitar, a horn, cymbals, and some drums. And you just have to use your imagination to figure out what's what. But it's mostly made out of minerals with a little stained glass and a pair of earrings I found in a parking lot.
So those big, round, shiny things are earrings.
I found them last week in a parking lot. And I
Wow.
thought, I was just finishing it up. I thought, how cool is that?
That's really nice.
It was meant to be. Yeah.
Beautiful. And so other found objects, the piece that's over in the middle over here, you created using some interesting
we live in
things.
Silicon Valley, and so I had to include, I took apart pieces of a computer. My son and I were just taking these things apart, and there were all these really interesting computer parts. Engineers like to look at it and say, oh, that's a that, and that's a that, and you should have plugged it all in and made it all work. And it's like, no,
No,
they're
it's art
pretty.
now.
And little kids love to do it because you could actually take the screws off the magnet, and the fan goes around, and there's wires in there to play with. And to me, it also represents kind of an aerial view of Silicon Valley, all the different Silicon Valley companies and having to work together.
So it's sort of like a map.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I wanted to mention, though, I founded a couple of years ago a group called Full Spectrum Mosaic Artists. And we're just a group that gets together once a month. We have people ranging from Redwood City through Aptos. And we get together and we do share. We share tips, we share objects, we exchange things. It's just a great group. And we learn from each other all the time. So we're always learning about different, backings and different ways to do things. So it's a lot of fun, and it's great having that group that we feed off of each other's energy and learn. And we've already had one exhibit together as a group. So
say the name of the group again.
It's got a long name. Full Spectrum Mosaics, Artists of Silicon Valley.
Oh, very nice.
It was a compromise name.
So what would one of your meetings be like?
Okay, first we eat. That's essential.
Oh, of course.
We eat and we gab, and we always bring art to share so we can see what each other's doing. If we have swap meets occasionally, that's great, which we don't always have, but every couple of months we swap things. And then we exchange tips and learning techniques. It's funny because there's 22 really active members now in the group, and yet none of us does the same type of mosaic. So,
Wow.
but this group is just great. There's from beginners through to quasi-professional mosaic artists. So it's a lot of fun and just always a learning experience.
That's what fascinates me about mosaics, is that it can be so different. I mean, you can tell that it's a mosaic, but the way people go about it and the styles.
And what you use, because, a lot of people like pique-assiette, which are plates, broken plates,
right.
and some are into ceramic tile, neither of which I do. But there's just all sorts of ways to combine things. And
Yeah, very nice.
A lot of fun.
So you are also an artist with the Silicon Valley Open Studio. So tell us, and I know this because I was at your beautiful home for the latest Silicon Valley Open Studios. We had a group of 6 artists together in your backyard, and it was really a great experience.
Yeah, I love Silicon Valley Open Studios is, I mean, one of the best things. The first year I did it when I was really nervous about anything and everything having to do with it, they have 2 different Silicon Valley universities, SVOS University, I guess is what it's called.
Yeah.
And they help you figure out pricing and how to best get people in to see your stuff, how to market yourself. So there were people there telling you how to get articles in the paper, and just that was such a good thing. And also meeting other artists. The first year I did it solo, and the following year I did it with 2 other artists, and now we were up to 6 this last year. I think it's great having a variety of artists, and it brings in a lot more people to see your art.
Yeah, that's one of the great things is doing the group shows, I think.
Oh, and in the directory that gets your name out there and has links to your website, so people can go to your website and find out. People would never have known I was around if I hadn't done that.
Yeah.
So it was really good. Yeah.
So briefly tell us a little bit about what you might be planning for the future.
Oh, I look around and I am inspired by so many things. I think I look at things differently now.
Right.
I'll go and say, I'll be in like Goodwill when my other place, like, oh, let's see. I could cut that up or do this or that, and I could use it, looking at a hall lampshade and seeing a flower. I just see things differently now. So it's a lot of fun to just be inspired by everything around.
Excellent.
What else can I do? Abstract or nature or picture, whatever. There's so many things.
Well, thank you so much for being on Talk Art. Your art is just so beautiful, and I really appreciate you talking about all of your pieces and parts and how you put it together.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. You want my gun?